Have you ever watched one of those highly polished mainstream romantic comedies?
Oh, yeah. Constantly.
Right, the ones where every misunderstanding is just kind of, cute, and every major argument somehow magically ends with a passionate kiss in the rain.
Right. And human desire is always neatly packaged with a nice little moral bow.
Exactly. You watch these movies, and maybe you think to yourself, this is missing something. Like it's completely ignoring the messy, contradictory, and honestly downright selfish reality of actual human desire.
It's a very comforting illusion, though. I mean, we've built it as a culture because we generally want our stories about intimacy to be safe.
Yeah, safe and predictable.
Exactly. We want clear heroes, clear villains, and a sanitized script where good behavior is rewarded with true love. It keeps our societal anxieties in check.
Well, today we are taking that sanitized script and just throwing it entirely out the window. For this deep dive, we're unpacking excerpts from a 2025 book titled Off the Chain, Volume 2 by Euftis Emery.
Published by Dominion Publishing, right?
Yes, exactly. And let's be incredibly clear right out of the gate here. We're going to frame this book exactly as the author presents it. It is a raw, unfiltered, and highly explicit collection of stories.
Very explicit.
Very. And it aggressively blends memory, fantasy, and lived experience.
And our mission today is not to judge or condemn or even endorse the highly controversial behavior depicted in these pages.
No, definitely not.
Instead, we want to look at this text as a cultural artifact. We're going to extract what these extremely explicit stories are actually saying beneath the surface. You know, what they say about power dynamics, transactional intimacy, and just the incredibly fluid nature of the human ego.
Right. So whether you find this material shocking or hilarious or completely offensive.
Which is highly possible.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, you might feel all three of those emotions in the span of a single page. But whatever you feel, it's going to challenge you to look at the massive gap between how people behave in public versus what they actually desire in private.
And the author makes absolutely no apologies for inducing that exact discomfort.
None at all.
In fact, he tells you right up front that making you uncomfortable is the stated goal of the project.
Yeah, in the preface, Emery explicitly warns the reader. He says this book is not polite, it doesn't ask permission, and it is absolutely not meant to comfort anyone who's looking for safe, sanitized sexuality wrapped in moral disclaimers.
I love how blunt that is.
It really is.
Yeah.
He tells you flat out that if you're easily offended, this is your very last warning before turning the page.
Which is just a brilliant way to establish the core philosophy of the text. I mean, he argues that life and desire do not move in a straight logical line.
Right. Lust doubles back on itself.
Exactly. Hard lessons show up years late. And that's the fundamental reason why the book itself jumps around chronologically rather than moving nicely from point A to point B.
It's chaotic.
It is structurally designed to reflect the chaos of human memory and actual lived experience.
And he introduces this fascinating concept early on called the dangerous middle space.
Oh, yeah, the dangerous middle space.
He describes it as this psychological area where memory, desire, and imagination overlap so tightly that separating them out into objective truth it doesn't even matter anymore. But okay, let's unpack this. Reading this preamble feels a bit like taking a sledgehammer to a Victorian romance novel.
That's a great way to put it.
But I'm struggling with this framing just a little bit. I mean, is the author just deeply cynical here?
How so?
Like, does declaring a book raw and unfiltered act as a convenient shield against criticism? Like, you can't judge me because I warned you I was being bad. Or is this a genuine attempt to capture a deeper psychological truth about human contradiction?
Well, it functions as a bit of both, honestly. But there is a profound psychological mechanism at play here. By actively stripping away the performative public morality right in the preface, the author removes the reader's safety net.
Right. You can't say you weren't warned.
Exactly. And if we look at how the brain actually encodes highly emotional or arousing memories, it doesn't act like a video camera recording objective facts.
It's not a documentary.
No, it acts like a narrative builder. It prioritizes the intensity of the feeling over the exact sequence of events. So that dangerous middle space he talks about is actually a very accurate description of how human memory functions when it's driven by primal urges.
Wow. So the structure itself is an exercise in psychology.
Yeah, and he notes that the stories are meant to make you laugh out loud and then immediately question yourself for laughing. The text is deliberately designed to short-circuit the polished avatars we present to society.
And that failure of public morality. The moment that polite avatar drops, It forces people to figure out how to actually interact when the masks are off.
Right, because the usual rules are gone.
Exactly. If society's rules no longer apply in this dangerous middle space, the characters have to invent their own rigid systems to manage their interactions. And in this book, that system is entirely built on transactions.
Completely.
Every single interaction is framed as an exchange where expectations must be explicitly met or the whole deal is off.
It's a relentlessly pragmatic, almost economic view of human connection. We are essentially looking at a very raw application of social exchange theory.
Which basically says we weigh the pros and cons of our relationships. Right?
Exactly. It posits that social behavior is the result of an exchange process where people want to maximize benefits and minimize costs.
So let's look at how that actually plays out in the story called Typical Birthday.
Oh, this is a perfect example.
Yeah, so our narrator, Euftis, is intensely disappointed with his girlfriend, Gia. It's his birthday, and she hasn't planned anything extravagant for him.
But she does give him two specific gifts.
Right. The first is a certificate stating she had a star named after him, and it's taped to a piece of cardboard.
Taped to cardboard.
Yeah. And the second gift is a key to her apartment.
Now, to a conventional romantic observer, those are massive, highly significant gestures.
Huge.
A star represents eternity, and giving someone a key represents the ultimate level of trust and vulnerability.
But Euftis literally throws both of those gifts into a neighbor's trash can on his way to his car.
Just tosses them.
Tosses them. He views the star as an offensively cheap gesture. He even has his friend Lucy do online research to confirm it.
And she finds out it's pretty cheap, right?
Yeah, Lucy confirms that naming a star only costs about $30 to $70.
Wow.
And the key, he doesn't see trust there at all. He'd use it as a purely manipulative tactic to gain 24-hour access to his life. Like a ploy to force a level of commitment that he actively does not want.
And the psychology behind his reaction really reveals the underlying currency of this universe. He perceives the key not as a gift, but as a threat to his autonomy.
Right.
He explicitly outlines his philosophy in the text. He says if a partner lacks the financial resources to give tangible, impressive things, there's no inherent shame in that.
But there's a catch.
A big catch. They must compensate for that deficit in other ways. They have to compensate with their time, with exceptional effort, or with domestic acts of submission.
Right. Which brings us to Kiana. Contrast his reaction to Gaia with his reaction to Kiana, this woman he meets in the chapter Grimier by far.
A totally different dynamic.
Completely.
Yeah.
Kiana is a sex worker from Atlanta, and she's temporarily in town taking care of her mother, who just had a leg amputated.
Heavy situation.
Very. But she doesn't engage with Euftis because she's desperate for survival money. She engages with him simply because she wants some going out money to hit the clubs with her sister, and her boyfriend back home refuses to provide it.
Right. She's completely straightforward about it.
She is totally unabashedly upfront about the transactional nature of their meeting. And Euftis respects that far more than he respected Gaia's key.
He appreciates the honesty of the transaction.
So what does this all mean? I mean, it sounds like he's treating human beings like line items on a spreadsheet, complete with audits. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. Is the author just a deeply broken cynic? Or is he actually being braver than the rest of us by admitting this is how human connection actually functions?
Well, he's operating from a place of pure, unfiltered ego. Think about your own relationships for a moment. Have you ever received a gift that felt like it had strings attached?
Oh, definitely.
Like a trap.
Exactly. A gift that felt more like a trap than a present. In this text, honesty is directly equated with blunt transactional exchange. When someone fails to come correct, which is exactly how he views Gaia offering what he sees as cheap emotional manipulation, the narrator's ego feels entirely justified in dismissing her and even committing infidelity.
Because she broke the contract.
Exactly. He views the transactional nature as the only authentic way to interact. It completely strips away the illusion of unconditional romance. If the terms of the contract aren't met, the contract is void.
And because the terms of that contract are so rigid, the moment they step into a physical encounter, the power dynamics start shifting wildly.
Oh, it is never static.
No, it's not a static agreement at all. Control is constantly being seized, aggressively negotiated, and sometimes completely surrendered.
The physical encounters are really just physical manifestations of the psychological power struggles we were just talking about. The transaction sets the stage, but the ego drives the action. Okay, let's go back to that chapter, Grimier by far. Euftis meets up with another woman named Rai. Now, he initially looks down on Rye because he finds her bourgeois.
She's very proper.
Right. She turns her nose up at things. She plays hard to get. She's maintaining that polite societal avatar we talked about. And worse, she figures out his ultimate physical weakness.
The tickling.
The tickling. He is incredibly ticklish. During their encounter, she actually uses this against him. She tickles him until he is writhing on the floor, completely losing his cool masculine control.
And his ego just cannot handle that.
He hates it. So he retaliates with extreme dominance. He brings out steel handcuffs, specifically noting he's not giving her the furry ones because she's been bad.
The details matter to him.
They really do. He uses baby oil, and at one point, he literally spells his own name on her body with his tongue,
Marking his territory.
He's asserting total territorial dominance.
Yeah.
But then Rye realizes she can't beat him with physical force, so she pivots entirely.
How does she manage to flip the dynamic back on him? Well, she introduces an extreme sensory disruption. She brings out these small specialty ice cubes and Altoids mints and introduces them into the act of oral sex.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. I want to look at this not like a chess match, but more like an electrical circuit.
Okay, an electrical circuit. I like that.
Right, because power in these stories isn't a static object you just hold in your hand. It's a current. It needs a ground to flow.
Okay.
And whoever acts as the ground in the bedroom suddenly controls the flow of the shock.
That is a perfect analogy because it explains the neuroscience of what Rye actually achieves with the ice and the mints.
How so?
The extreme sensory overload of the freezing cold and the burning mint essentially bypasses his prefrontal cortex, the logical, ego-driven part of his brain that's trying to maintain that dominant, cool persona.
Just too much input.
Exactly. The sensory input is so intense that his brain literally cannot maintain the avatar. He goes from being the dominant punisher to begging her to stop. He's pushed to the absolute brink of losing his mind.
Wow.
True vulnerability, according to the logic of these stories, only happens when someone is pushed completely past their physical or psychological limits. Euftis couldn't be vulnerable until his composure was shattered, and Ray couldn't drop her bourgeois act until he physically restrained her. The battle itself is the intimacy.
And that fluidity of power, the idea that it's an electrical current anyone can harness if they're bold enough, it shows up everywhere in the book, completely scrambling traditional norms.
Oh, absolutely.
Like in the story called Bitch, You Are Fierce, written by a guest contributor named Gina Page. Her character, Caddy, is being aggressively taught how to perform oral sex by her best friend, Jason. And the visual detail here is just wild.
So such a striking image.
Jason is a 6'2" drag queen wearing a corset and stilettos, towering over her and commanding the entire encounter. Traditional gender and power dynamics are just completely thrown out the window.
And we see that exact same current being harnessed in the most mundane settings, too.
Like the kitchen table.
Yes. In the fan mail section, a reader named Kiwi Mystery writes in to explain how reading the first volume of Emery's book empowered her to take sudden control of her own relationship.
Oh, the baked chicken story.
The baked chicken story.
Imagine this. She writes that her partner was just sitting at the kitchen table, eating a completely normal dinner of baked chicken, black beans, and yellow rice while reading the book.
Very domestic.
And without a single word of warning, she initiates this incredibly aggressive, dominant sexual encounter right there in the kitchen, demanding that he verbalize his pleasure. She completely seized the power in a moment of utter domestic banality.
It perfectly illustrates that power is situational. It's entirely dependent on who is willing to flip the switch in that exact moment, regardless of whether you're in a corset or eating baked chicken on a Tuesday night.
But, flipping that switch sometimes means pushing things into territory that is deeply, deeply uncomfortable for the reader.
Yeah, it definitely goes there.
When you're constantly chasing that extreme sensory overload to bypass the ego, you eventually run out of normal boundaries to cross. And that pushes the characters into the absolute extremes of this book, what the author calls the grimy reality.
This is where that dangerous middle space we discussed earlier becomes genuinely dangerous because it starts involving collateral damage.
Let's look at the concept of edge games. In the chapter appropriately titled Grimy, Euftis drives to the home of a woman named Coco. He arrives unannounced.
Very risky.
Super risky. He knows for a fact that her boyfriend, Jerome, arrives home from work like clockwork at 6:20 p.m. So Euftis aggressively sleeps with Coco on the hard tile floor of her house, meticulously watching the clock the entire time.
Down to the minute.
Yeah, timing the encounter to finish just minutes before Jerome pulls into the driveway. He actually drives past Jerome on the street as he's leaving. It is clearly not just about the physical act of sex.
No, it's about the psychological thrill of proximity to consequence. It's the dopamine hit of the taboo.
But it goes even further than that in a chapter called Grimiest.
This one is intense.
Euftis is having an intense, highly combative sexual encounter with a woman named Rena. Rena is shouting these military-style commands at him like, fuck it hard, don't stop, which he actually finds disrespectful and irritating because it challenges his ego.
He hates taking orders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then the text delivers this incredibly uncomfortable twist. The perspective suddenly shifts, and we find out what is happening just outside the bedroom door.
The revelation of the daughter.
Yes. The text reveals that Rena's 18-year-old daughter, Dahlia, is standing right out in the hallway.
Wow.
She is listening to the entire violently loud encounter between her mother and Euftis. And she is using a cucumber to masturbate to the sounds.
It's so far past a normal boundary.
And it gets worse. Afterward, Euftis walks out into the dark hallway to get a drink, steps barefoot into the bodily fluids Dahlia left on the floor, and realizes exactly what she was doing out there.
And his reaction is telling.
His reaction to this discovery is what I find so baffling. He doesn't recoil in horror. He later admits to his friend Pumpkin that he is now intensely tempted to pursue the 18-year-old daughter because she has what he describes as a grande ghetto ass, over 50 inches, even while fully acknowledging it would be the absolute grimiest thing he has ever done.
He knows it's terrible, but he still wants it.
I really have to push back on the author here. I mean, is this where the claim of honesty just crosses the line into pure, destructive, hypocritical fantasy? Think about the glaring contradiction here. We have a narrator who demands absolute, pristine respect, throwing Gaia's birthday gifts in the garbage because he felt disrespected. But he happily engages in psychological warfare in other men's homes and contemplates sleeping with a woman's teenage daughter.
What's fascinating here is that the hypocrisy is exactly the point.
Wait, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
The narrator's morality is completely compartmentalized. Psychologically, compartmentalization is a defense mechanism where people mentally separate conflicting thoughts, emotions, or experiences to avoid the discomfort of cognitive dissonance.
So he just puts them in different boxes in his head.
Exactly. The author is not presenting a hero. He isn't presenting a role model or a standardized moral compass. He is presenting a deeply flawed, highly hypocritical observer who is actively participating in a world where everyone from the narrator plotting his escapes to the mother's barking orders to the daughters listening at the door is driven by selfish primal hungers. The hypocrisy isn't a flaw in the writing. The hypocrisy is the exact human condition the writing is trying to expose.
It really forces you to look at the mess, which is really the synthesis of this entire deep dive. Off the chain. Volume 2 is a text that deliberately weaponizes explicit sexuality.
It absolutely does.
It uses graphic shock value as a tool to force the reader to look at the messy, selfish, and highly transactional nature of the human ego.
And it manages to do so with a very specific, almost fatalistic brand of cynical humor. It refuses to take itself entirely seriously, even when dealing with these really heavy psychological themes.
You see that humor perfectly in the bitchology interlude.
Oh, that section is wild.
There is this whole diatribe comparing men to household objects. It says men are like blenders. You need one in your house, but you aren't quite sure why.
Right.
Or men are like lava lamps. Fun to look at, but not very bright. It is a worldview that expects very little nobility from anyone, male or female.
It suggests that beneath our polite society, beneath those sanitized avatars, we're all just constantly negotiating transactions of desire, trying to satisfy our egos without getting caught in the process.
Which brings us right back to where we started. That comfortable, sanitized, romantic comedy version of the world versus the messy, grimy reality.
The reality is definitely a lot harder to look at.
It is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final lingering question to explore on your own. Think about the last time you were deeply offended or shocked by someone else's private behavior, or a scandalous story you heard on the news. Were you truly outraged by their actions, or were you just uncomfortable being reminded of the secret, messy, totally irrational desires you keep locked away in your own dangerous middle space?